So all these buttons are going to do right now is cause these cubes to appear and fall, right? That's all we're going to do. So obviously if I play this again right now, we've got cubes that just fall into my scene, right? I don't do anything. But what I want to do is, you know what, I'm going to have one fall every time I click a button, right? So what we need to do is create some actions for these buttons to do that effect, to turn on items when we want them to activate, right? So to do that, super easy. In my canvas, I'm just going to go ahead and click button 01. And if I scroll down in my button settings, Unity gives us this little events window here called onClick, okay? And the cool thing about the onClick events for buttons in Unity are you can make all kinds of things happen. You can trigger animations, you can make objects appear or disappear.
Did you record again?
Yeah, I did. You can even make things spawn in and spawn out. All kinds of stuff you can do with these on-click events. And there's a ton of events that they give you. And you can see that by, first, what we need to do is create a new event, right? So on this button 01, it's this little plus sign here in the on-click. I'm going to say, let's make one, right? So it gives me a little slot here that I can add. And I can add as many of these on-click events to one button as I want. So I can potentially have a button have all kinds of things happen once I click it, right? You can create all these different events for if that button's activated, right? You can access special code that you bring into Unity. You can do all kinds of stuff. But for now, we're just going to turn an object on and off, okay? So to do that, what I want to do is say, hey, button 01, I want you to control my falling cube 1, okay? So I have falling cube 1 in my scene, right? Button 01, I want you to control that. So you'll notice in this onClick event field right here, we have this none object, right? It's like, well, what do you want me to do? Basically what this is saying at onClick at runtime, so once I'm clicked, what object do you want what to happen to what object, basically, right? So let's go ahead and drag our falling cube 1 into that object field, right? So now, when this button is clicked, it's going to reference falling cube 1. But we need to tell it to do something, because right now it's not doing anything, right? So what I can do is, in my scene, and this is very, very, very basic. This is like starter UI functions 101, like very basic stuff, right? But what I'm going to do is, in my hierarchy, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the visibility for falling cube 1. And to do that, on my falling cube here, I'm just going to go up to its checked or its active icon right here at the very top, and I'm just going to turn it off. So it doesn't exist yet in the scene. It's there, but it's just turned off, right? You'll see like every game object we have in our scene, it has this little checkbox at the top, right? This little checkbox will always turn off or turn on an object in our scene. If it's checked, that means it's on. If it's unchecked, that means it's off, right? So for falling cube 1, we're going to go ahead and turn it to the off state. And what I'm going to do is with my button 01, that under my on-click states, I'm referencing falling cube 01, I'm going to tell it, hey, when I click you, I want you to turn on falling cube 1. Okay, so right now it's off. We're going to turn it on, right? So to do that, we have these functions. Okay, so functions are what control all of these events for our object. So anytime you use a function, you're basically telling a button, hey, do something to this object, right? Functions are do something to this, right? The function is exactly what it is. It's like do something, like execute whatever I tell you to do, right? So to do that under functions, we've got a bunch of different things, right? And we'll get into other stuff later, like we can mess with the rigid bodies here. We can turn those on or off, right? We can mess with the collider settings. We can turn those on or off, or even mess with the physics. We can mess with the mesh renderer, the mesh filter, even the transform settings, right? We can change the transform settings of an object. We can also, on the game object itself, tell it to do stuff like turn on. So to do that, Unity describes objects as either being active or not active, right? So you'll see at the bottom here we have this set active function, set active, under game object, set active. I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now what GameObject.setActive does is it gives you this little checkbox right here, right? Now that checkbox is a one-to-one relationship with on falling cube 1 its little checkbox right there. It's basically referencing that checkbox. Okay? So on button 01, when we reference falling cube 01, we want that to be on, right? When this is clicked, I want you to make sure that that box is checked. Okay, so we have that box, check game object, that's set active. Right, so now to test it, if I play my scene, I can go play, and I've got 2 cubes falling, but if I click button 01, I've got a 3rd cube that falls, right? Okay, super crazy awesome, right? Next level. What's up?
Is the process for, like, because when you hit it once, it only goes once and you get nothing. Is the process
Correct.
for, like...
Spawning's different.
Okay.
So spawning would be like we actually have to bring a script in for spawning and apply it to the button and say, run this spawning script every time it's clicked. And we can get into that before the end of class. I'll download a spawning script and we'll use that. But for right now, this is just visibility, right? So we're just turning it on and off, right? Let me move these falling cubes so I can at least see them. Let me just go in here really quickly and just so we can see what we're looking at here really quickly. Let me move these guys down. And we'll just put them in the view so we can see them. So if I press play, oh, still a little bit high. Hold on, let me just bring them down a little bit more. Okay, great. So if I press 1, there it is. Right? So, and to your point, you know, if I keep pressing it, it's not going to do anything, right? Because that on-click state just says, hey, turn it on, right? So we turned it on. So if we keep clicking it, it's just going to keep turning it on, which does nothing because it's already on, right? So instead of having a button that does nothing in our scene, why don't we turn off button 01 after it's clicked? Why don't we kill button 01 so we can't click on it again, right? So it does its action and it's done. So in order to do that, I'm going to go out of play mode here. I'm going to click back on button 1. Now down in my on-click events, right, I'm going to add another event. And for this event, I'm going to reference myself as a button, right? So I'm just going to grab button 01, which I already have selected. I'm going to grab myself, and I'm going to say, hey, when I'm clicked, I'm going to go to game object. I'm going to set the active boolean, and I'm going to uncheck it, right? So the button will turn itself off, right? So if I play, if I click button 01 now, the button disappears, but the cube falls. But I can't click the button now, right? So that's kind of good for these one-hit kind of things you have going on in your levels. If you want to activate something, like start the sequence, right? You press start, then the start button goes away, but then the sequence starts, right? So if we're doing like a Rube Goldberg type machine, right, you would have that initiate button sitting there, especially in AR. You tap it, the button would disappear, but then the ball would fall, and then everything else would kind of react based on what's happening in the physics, right? So what I'm going to do, and just as a trial to you guys, I want you guys to now, with the other buttons, do the exact same thing, but for the other falling cubes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my other falling cubes, right? So all of these are turned off. In button 2, I'm going to come down to its on-click event. I'm going to add a slot. I'm going to say, hey, let's bring in falling cube 2. Let's go ahead to its game object state, and we're going to turn its active boolean to on. And then I'm going to make another state, reference the button itself, button 02, and I'm going to turn that to off. All right, so make sure that's unchecked. Now on button 03, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to click button 03. I'm going to go ahead and create an action. I'm going to reference falling cube 3. I'm going to make a function for that game object, set the active boolean to on. I'm going to make another state for the button itself. I'm going to bring that over, set its active state to off. All right? So I've got 3 buttons that all do the same thing for different objects in the scene. So if I test that really quickly, play, I should see 1 cube fall, 2 cubes fall, 3 cube falls. All right? So very simple. This is kind of the very, very basics of doing stuff with UI buttons. Okay, what's up?
Mine isn't working.
All right, I'll come around. So right now, try that out. Try to take those 3 buttons, and what I want you to do is just really quickly go in to the on-click state and set 2 actions or events for that on-click state. Reference the objects and have them turn on or off depending on what they are. So the button, once clicked, you're going to turn it off. The falling cube, once clicked, you're going to turn it on. Okay? Let's try that out. And I'm going to come around and help you guys. And I'm going to turn off OBS.